Hello and welcome back to Journey into the Bible, where I question your beliefs so that you don't have to. So today we're going to be going through Matthew's Gospel, chapters 9, 10, and maybe chapter 11. We just left off where Jesus got kicked out of town for killing like 2,000 pigs. So he gets in a boat and leaves. But the first contradiction that I want to look at in Matthew chapter 9 here is verse 18. A synagogue leader comes and says, "My daughter just died. Come and place your hand on her so she will live." The contradiction is because in the original version of this story, in Mark chapter 5, she's not dead yet. Before, in the middle of the story, there's something else stuck in there, that the healing touch of Jesus, where this woman who's been bleeding for years, she says, "If only I can touch Jesus' cloak, I will be healed." And she does that, and she's healed instantly in Matthew's Gospel. But in the original story, if you look at it, when she does this, Jesus doesn't know who touched him. Okay, remember what I said about Matthew's Gospel being not only different, it's a complete improvement of everything that Jesus does in the Gospel of Mark. Okay, if it takes him a few seconds to perform a miracle, when Matthew's Gospel is written, it becomes instant. He heals them instantly. Instead of healing many, he heals all the people. Instead of one blind man, there's two blind men. And on it goes. So even though it's not really a contradiction, it's more of an embellishment, I'm going to leave that on there as contradiction number 2. Okay, so contradiction number 3 is in Matthew chapter 9, verse 27. He heals 2 blind men. Good for him. Then he tells them, don't tell anybody. Of course, they go tell anyway. It never says what happens. Do they get punished? Does Jesus get mad and catch up with them later? Don't tell anybody. Ooh. Anyway, in the original yarn, in Mark chapter 8, verse 22, he only heals 1 blind man. Contradiction number 4, and then we've talked about this before, chapter 9, verse 35, he heals every sickness. Remember Mark's Gospel, he heals many. Number 5 here. We're in chapter 10 of Matthew's Gospel. This is where he names the 12 apostles and he sends them out to perform miracles and heal sickness. In chapter 10, verse 1, it says that his disciples can heal every sickness and disease. But in Mark's Gospel, chapter 3, verse 15, he only gives them the authority to drive out demons. So, hey, I got a cold. Can you heal me? No, but if you got a demon, I can help. Anyway, and of course, this power doesn't even work because in chapter 17, they fail. Remember, the disciples come to Jesus and they say, how come we couldn't drive the demon out? And he says, well, you don't have any faith. You have so little faith, which is a contradiction from Mark chapter 9, where he says it can only be healed by prayer and fasting. We talked about that before. But anyway, contradiction number 6. In Matthew chapter 10, verse 3, he names Thaddeus as one of the 12 apostles or disciples. But right there in Luke chapter 6, verse 16, instead of Thaddeus, we have Judas, the son of James. Don't confuse him with Judas Iscariot, the one who betrays Jesus. Contradiction number 7, Matthew chapter 10, verses 5 and 6, he tells them to preach to the Jews and not to the Gentiles. That's the lost sheep of Israel. But when you go to Acts, which was written by Luke, remember that, chapter 15, verse 7, Peter says, brothers, you know that in the early days God made a choice among you that the Gentiles would hear from my lips the message of the gospel and believe. So contradiction number 8, Matthew chapter 10, verse 28, don't be afraid of those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul. But 2 chapters later, Jesus is afraid. Why? Because the Jews are trying to kill him. It says in chapter 12, verse 15, that Jesus was aware of this and withdrew from that place. Okay? Wouldn't he just say, hey, I just told my disciples not to be afraid of you guys, And here I am trying to sneak out of town to get away from you guys. I'm not afraid of nothing. I'm Jesus. So it's contradiction. It's also confirmed in John's Gospel, chapter 7, verse 1. After this, Jesus traveled throughout Galilee, but he didn't want to travel in Judea because the Jews were trying to kill him. Contradiction number 9. Matthew, we're going to look at chapter 11 for this one. Verse 29. Jesus says, I am gentle and humble at heart. He is neither gentle nor is he humble. John chapter 2 verse 15. What does he do? He makes a whip of cords and he drives all the people out of the courts that are coming there to exchange their coins so they don't have to bring coins with pagan images on them into the temple. And Jesus drives them away with a whip. Does that sound like, that would be assault and battery nowadays? And does this sound very humble to you? He's always talking about, oh, there's somebody better than Solomon here now. God says that Solomon was the greatest king that ever lived and the wisest, and there's never been one before, nor will there be one after him. But Jesus says, oh, hey, look at me, I'm better than Solomon. You don't have none of this talk show gossip like you do in the New Testament. People like the Apostle Paul, he's always talking about, yeah, I went up to Peter and I opposed him right to his face in his little letters, his text messages to the Romans or Corinthians, I can't remember which one it is. You don't see anything like that in the scriptures and God's scriptures because, we're one prophet like Isaiah saying, oh, Ezekiel, he's not as good as me. So Jesus doesn't sound very humble to me. Maybe you think that's humble. I don't know. We just have different definitions apparently. Contradiction number 10. This is a spoiler alert if you haven't read the Bible. There's supposed to be a Messiah that comes in the future. And the Jews believe he hasn't come yet because, well, we won't get into that right now. But the Christians think that Jesus was the Messiah and he's going to come back a second time. But here's the biggest contradiction for me in the entire Bible. The entire purpose of the Messiah, as prophesied by the prophets in the prophet section of the Tanakh, or Old Testament, what was the Messiah supposed to do? Well, it's very simple. It doesn't need to read like your credit card statement privacy updates. It's pretty simple. Isaiah chapter 2, verse 4. He's going to bring world peace. He will judge between the nations and arbitrate for many peoples. They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will no longer take up the sword against nation, nor train anymore for war. That's what's supposed to happen when the Messiah is here. What will happen during the Messianic age. Okay, it's pretty simple. It doesn't need further explanation. World peace. And what does Jesus say in chapter 10, verse 34? Do not assume that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. Perhaps that's the only prophecy that Jesus fulfilled, because look at everything that happened after Jesus. 2,000 years of misery at the hands of, the Crusades and the Holocaust and bloodshed and torture and deprivation of human rights, all at the hands of the sword at Christians trying to spread their goodwill across the planet. Anyway, I hope this was fun and educational. Before I end, I don't say this often enough. Christians are good people, and most of the people I know are Christians. Family, friends, co-workers, whatever. I don't have nothing against Christians as people. It's just your beliefs that I'm investigating. And I'm not trying to offend anybody or try to convince you to not be a Christian. But if you are thinking about being a Christian, before you go joining something that later on you decide, well, I can't get out of it now, this is a good place to start, is by looking at these things and questioning them. Thank you for watching.